Hey, Thomas Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. On this show, I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry. So today's episode is a pretty special one. We're actually catching up with Barry Waitte, owner and vintner at Tamber Bay. Barry, how's it going?
Hey, Drew, nice to see you. It's going great. Beautiful day in Napa. It's great driving up the valley, coming to work. Sun is out. We're hitting in the mid 60s. So life's good right now. It's good.
No, that's great. Yeah, we're recording this right at the beginning of February after a month of historic rainstorms.
Big time. But if I could just kind of lead off with that, but much needed. Now, there were some areas that got hit pretty hard. So I don't want to kind of, minimize some of the issues that some people had, up and down, specifically Northern California. I think Southern California got hit pretty hard too. But, from Napa's perspective, and at least in some places here in Northern California, it was first very welcome. Mm-hmm. If we go back historically, this is when we used to get all our rain. So it's not unheard of. Though we had a few of these, and I just love the name that the weather people got, these atmospheric rivers. Like that's pretty ominous.
It does seem like that name's popping up more often now.
Yeah. And every once in a while they say an atmospheric river's coming, and I look out the window and I go, well, yeah, it's raining. I mean, that's not that big a deal, but we did have some big ones come in, and I know because I checked it over the weekend. Last year, up until last weekend, in the rain season, which for us starts in November, we had 9.5 inches of rain. This year we are already at 28.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so we're right at the level that would be normal, but we still have some more rain season to go. And I understand it's going to get a little wet again in about a week, but pretty normal stuff as far as I'm understanding. But, the most important thing with that is the ground is getting very happy. And our reservoirs, the big ones are filling, the small ones are full. There's a lot of energy being put into the ground. And, after two vintages that were really substandard as far as yields are concerned, this may be what we need to really kind of push us back up into some normalcy of yields and vineyards. We need it. 20 was a disaster for from smoke, fire and all that kind of stuff. So we're kind of looking forward to that. So
it's a pendulum, and we need to see it kind of swing back to the middle for a little while.
It is. You just don't know how long those wags go, but it's usually a 2 to 3 year pendulum. I think you're absolutely right. So this may be the upswing that we get back, and if we can get back to having an 18 and 19, kind of back to backs, toast to all that. That would be a great bit of fun.
Oh, absolutely.
So we're doing lots of planning right now in our vineyards of both how to manage this energy that's going to come out. There's certain things that we do different from if we're in a drought. So we're thinking about that. We're not actually implementing any of that at the moment. But
what sort of things do you do to prepare for sort of a wet season spring?
So the first thing is we are planting cover crops and we started it last month, but specifically cover crops that will assist in taking moisture out of the ground, right? Specifically the top. So for example, there's some what we call long-rooted grasses that we can put in that will help kind of dry out the top of the soil, because there's no good in having the root systems kind of go back up to the surface, right? Sure. We want them to go down. So if we put this competition at the top with these type of cover crops that will grow for 3 to 5 months, that's a real positive thing. And that's kind of been done. So now we're starting to see it grow, and they're just grasses for all intents and purposes. Inside the vineyard, it's just mostly conversation right now about the pruning that is going on right now, and how do we do that? There's a number of cases where if there's that much energy, how do we let the plant exercise that energy as opposed to kind of build up? And so in many cases where we do what is called cane pruning. Cane pruning is where we literally take it down to the bare minimum. We don't use the existing cordon, way far out. We actually cut that up and then use just last year's growth as now the so-called cordon line. In some vines, we're actually putting a third one out.
Oh,
right. So it's usually 2, but now we're putting a third one out.
If there's enough energy.
Because there's so much energy, right? So it just helps the plant just manipulate that energy in more places. So anyway, those are 2 examples, one on plant and one on the ground that we're doing. And then we just kind of wait and see what Mother Nature does over the next couple months.
Absolutely. I was excited. We kind of jumped in. I was so excited to catch up. To the listeners, we talked back in about this time last year, and the episode aired in June. So if you want to learn all about Barry Waitte and his tech history and how he's founded his winery, tune into that episode. Today we're catching up. So Barry, since we last talked, it was back in April. What's the latest with Tamber Bey and yourself?
Well, what's the latest with everything that's going on? Latest with Tamber Bey is we are taking on a few new vineyards this harvest, which are kind of neat.
Cool.
We're progressing. In my tech days, I was born and bred product marketing guy. And what I love about product marketing is the creativity in making stuff. And I'm not the engineer making it, but I'm the one that transitions everything from the making all the way through the packaging and the pricing and getting it out there. So we're in that stage right now in figuring out what are we going to do in 2023 in the harvest. And so we have two new vineyards that I'm willing to kind of talk about that are really exciting.
Glad to hear about it.
Yeah. So one is a vineyard down in the Santa Maria area. So I'm jumping out of Napa for this. And there's a great vineyard that's just east of the Santa Maria city called Bien Nacito.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty popular. It's pretty big. So, and we're lucky to get in there, and we're going to pull some Chardonnay off and make what I would suggest is a real kind of a French Burgundy style that'll be treated with about 12 to 14 months in French oak. We'll actually ferment the juice in the barrels. So that's our intention. So it's going to have, and we do this with another vineyard here in Napa, but what's going to be great is that the two different terroirs are so different. Even though stylistically they'll go in the same direction, they will be very two different wines. The other one is truly exciting, and in some respects, I've kind of bit the bullet on this one. I've signed up with a colleague, a friend of mine, so to speak, but he's one of the living legends here in Napa Valley, and that's Andy Beckstoffer. So Tamber Bey is going to start making some Beckstoffer juice.
Oh, that's exciting.
Now we won't see that for 3 years, right? Because it's Cabernet and so forth. But there's an Oakville vineyard that is very close to where I live, and I've watched it for years, and I've watched it develop. And there's been some new plantings that took place 4 or 5 years ago, and so I want to jump into that. And it's a place called Missouri Hopper for people who come up Napa Valley and really kind of take that corner right out of Yountville and go into Oakville. It's right there on the highway off to the left, and so we're pretty excited about that. So from a planting and strategic perspective, that's pretty exciting. These will be new products in our line. We've seen for a couple of years, but this is how we have to think about this in our business.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out for those. And you're still president of the Oakville Winegrowers Association?
I am president of the Oakville Winegrowers Association. I was honored. I am the smallest winery that has ever had that representative seat. And I sit next to the CEO of Opus and the CEO of Farniente and, other really, premier places. And so I just have a great bit of fun. I mean, we're hanging out with the best of the best. And we've got some neat things planning. So the idea of the associations, the AVAs, and there's 19 of them in Napa Valley. The idea of these associations is to promote that particular AVA. So the Oakville AVA. And as president, I've embarked on a campaign that's pretty cool. We're going to take Oakville to London.
Really?
We're going to take Oakville to London. So for years, there's been an event here called the Taste of Oakville. There's been 30, 35 wineries represented into that. It's a one-day tasting event. Some people suggest it's one of the best tastings in Napa Valley because it's just all Oakville. And it's from Screaming Eagle to Harlan to Tamber Bay to Paradise. I mean, it's just an insane experience because it's all big Cabernets. But for a couple years in the past, we've taken it to New York, but this year we're going to take it to London. And because I think we really want to start promoting the Oakville brand internationally. And in London, if you're going to do international, you got to start somewhere, and no better place than to do London. So we've got a couple tastings planted out there that are going to take place in the institution of Pall Mall, which is about a 250-year-old wine institution there, and bring in some of the best there. So that's kind of a fun thing that's going on.
Yeah, that's super exciting.
So that's good. So for Cabernet, and
last time we talked a lot about Cabernet, but today we've got a special Pinot Noir tasting. We're going to shift the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I was kind of saving up for that one.
Oh yeah, I spoiled
Because, okay,
part.
so these are decisions that were made years ago, 2 to 3 years ago. And Derek Flegel, our head winemaker, and I got together and we kind of challenged each other on what we can do better. And again, my corporate experience kind of tells me if you're not thinking of change and progressing forward, then you're actually just going backwards somehow, because competition and all kinds of other things could be overwhelming you. So I really challenged Derek to rethink our Pinot Noir program, our red Burgundy program.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 3 vineyards that we've been playing with for years. And we were getting good representative scores, low 90s. 94 was one, so we're happy with that in some respects. But we used COVID and the 20 fires and smoke that we were victims of, so forth, to say, okay, let's just hit the reset. If we didn't have the legacy to deal with, and I don't own any Pinot Noir fruit, so it's not coming out of my vineyard. If we don't have that legacy, how do we move forward and raise the bar? And I think we did that. And so that was a couple of years ago. So these were fruit that we're going to talk about. It was picked in 2021 from 3 very distinct vineyards. And so I'm excited to get them out because, we are just introducing them to the world. And these vineyards are kind of well known, especially 2 of them are extremely well known in the world. So, and you've got the bottles.
Yes. Today we've got the Radian Vineyard from Santa Rita Hills down south. And in contrast, we got the Mayfield Vineyard in Sonoma Coast.
Yes. So 2 fabulous vineyards. So let's start with talking about Mayfi. There you are. They're in our, what we call our signature collection bottles, which are just beautiful silk screen.
And have these been released, Barry, to the public?
Just released.
Okay.
Yes.
Because at the time when we discussed doing this, they hadn't been released. So
yeah. So just released and available. So we can talk about those. So this is 2 of 3 that we have. So let's talk about, first of all, Mayfi. Mayfi. In French, I think it means something like either the girls or the sisters or something like that. Mm-hmm. This is a vineyard just outside of Sebastopol. And I found this vineyard because I'm a big fan of Linmar Winery over there.
Oh, absolutely.
And they've been making fruit, but interestingly, they get fruit from this vineyard, but they don't call it Mayfi. And so I was over there doing a tasting with their team. And it just came in conversation. It says, where do you get this? And they said this, that, and so forth. And I said, well, isn't that the Mayfi vineyard? And they said, oh, yes, but we don't use that name. So with that as an impetus, we decided to go there. And it took about a year plus for us to kind of really get an engagement going because they were going to have some fruit available. And so we succeeded in doing that. Now, Mayfi is in an interesting area that gets a lot of character of wind and coolness. And those are some really good characters in growing for a Pinot Noir. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really enjoying that. We've made 330 cases, so it's not big.
Very limited.
Respect, but this is the biggest of the 3. So there's some availability of that.
No, that is good. How for the vineyard, how large is that vineyard?
I'm going to tell you 14 acres.
Real small.
Yeah, real small. And of course, we're just one of, I don't know actually how many people purchase out of that, but we've got our own section. So what's really cool and how we kind of work when we work with growers is we want our rows.
That was almost in the Burgundy model where everybody's got a little bit of Romany content, but you've got your 6 or 7 vines.
Right. And here, like it's hilly. It goes uphill and we're on kind of the side of a hill, and the fruit on the other side of the hill is very different because it is on the other side of the hill. So you have different influences of sun, some temperature, maybe where the wind is, so forth. And so they're just very different pockets that belong to this. So it's a little bit of a northwest facing. So it gets a bit of that afternoon sun, which is good. A lot of wind out there. And because of some of the proximity of where it is, it's a cool climate. Mm-hmm. So, we're pulling mid to late season for what would be Pinot off of this and first vintage.
So that's exciting. So your rows are locked in. Do you do the vineyard management there too, or just have the locked in rows?
We just have locked in rows. One of the criteria that we have internally is when we're dealing with third party growers, which right now I source from 8 different vineyards, soon to be 10, because I got 2 more coming this year, is their willingness to work with us in our thoughts about growing. And let's get down into the business side. This is a yin and yang pulling, because we pay them by the ton, right? So it's how much they produce. But many of our recommendations have a tendency to, let's say we drop fruit. We want to kind of minimize how much fruit is on the vine so that all the proper energy gets to the fruit that's there. So there's a bit of a yin and a yang, and you can kind of tell it. They say, let's drop a little fruit for all kinds of reasons. And that's kind of counter to their business model. But we want to make sure that there's at least a good rapport and a willingness to discuss that. Now, at the end of the day, they know that Mayfee is going to be on that bottle. So it's their brand, and they're looking at us the same way we're looking at them. Is the quality of their growing and the quality of our winemaking together should make a fantastic wine. And so that's the relationship that gets us forward and to prosper well with this. So you've got it open.
I got it open. Excited. I have to try it as we're talking about this.
For this sake, I'm gonna live vicariously through your vision here of this.
Just a beautiful lot. Almost like a very rich perfume on the nose.
It's got a great forwardness to it. It's very bright. It's true to what I think is the Pinot grape. And if I had to suggest, it's kind of what I always call mid-right. And to me, that means it's got this robust cherry kind of on the darker side, but there's going to be some good hints of blue fruit coming.
Yes.
But kind of hinting. It's not
overbearing. You can taste it on the end. A little bit of that kind of a blue fruit, blueberry quality.
Yep.
Right on the mid palate towards to the end part. At least on my side.
As I said, we made 330 cases. It's all French oak. It's different from our other models where we would do a bit of whole cluster fermentation. We did not in this. We didn't think it was necessary. I think the fruit just speaks so beautifully for itself onto that. And we bottled it in August, first week in August, and just released it the last week in January. So literally just a week and a half ago.
And is this available to the public, or is it only available to members, or how are you doing that, Barry?
Yeah, so it's a new program. And so if you go on our website, you'll see ways to join into this. You could just buy the wine itself, but with only 330 cases. And I don't think we're going to be expanding that too big over the next couple of years. There's a way to sign up so you can be in the allocation as it goes forward, but it's brand new. So we kind of, not only did we have a clean slate on how we're going to produce it, we have a clean slate on how we're going to market it.
How you're going to sell it. Yeah.
And how we're going to sell it. So it's not a wine that we'll put in distribution. You won't see it out there in retailers and restaurants. It's, again, 330 cases. It'll
go fast.
I think so. Once we get it out there, we're really pleased with this.
Yeah, we talked a lot last time about the sense of place, especially with Oakville and the Cabernet. And I mean, I've had a lot of Sonoma Pinot Noirs, and this definitely has that kind of sense of place, and that I can't say terroir because I'm not that familiar with the Mayfee vineyard, but it definitely feels like it doesn't just evoke like a generic Pinot aroma. It definitely, it smells identifiable. If I had enough of it, I could spot it blind.
Yes. Drew, I think that's actually very indicative of really good Pinot fields. It is the varietal that really embodies its terroir, right? And all the things that influence it, from sun and soil and rain and all these good things. And even more so than the Cabernet grape, the Pinot grape is very sensitive to that. I mean, literally, I was talking about the fruit on this side of the hill is going to be very different from this side of the hill. And you would actually taste differences into that. And that's indicative of the Pinot grape. And then in this particular area, I think it really absorbs that into its flavor profile.
How was the 21 vintage in Sonoma?
It was good. 21 was a good vintage. I think it's pretty highly rated by the critics, just as far as the general overall vintage. We didn't get the yields we wanted to get. So we were about 75, 80% of our expectation. So that's not a disaster by any means. And then, it's sometimes, vintners and specifically the growers would tell you, when we're short on yield, it's actually beneficial to quality. Because, there's a great quality quantity quotient in our business. And so if it was the opposite, if we had 120% of yield, there's generally some sacrifice of quality into that, just as far as the botany of the plant. So again, 75, 80% on average. And that was our expectation. But I think still a very good quality here by what everybody's telling me. So that's a good stuff.
No, absolutely.
Where in the Sonoma Coast area is this exactly?
So it's about a mile and a half outside toward the, if I remember right, I'm usually not driving, so I don't pay attention, but go to Sebastopol and go a little bit west of that. And, you're definitely in the hills.
It's a perfect region for Pinot.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really curious to see how this evolves over time. And Pinot, I've sold a lot of Burgundy in my day, and it's selling the tougher vintages is always to the general consumer. We always positioned it as following a Pinot Noir producer is like almost like a marriage. You learn more about the wine in the bad times than you do in the good.
Yep.
It's really neat. You just learn all the idiosyncrasies, and I can feel this is definitely a good vintage, but I can see that it's got that sense of place, and I can't wait to see subsequent vintages come out and how they just what that vineyard has to offer.
Oh, likewise. And Drew said, as you know, and we talked about last time, we're mostly a Cabernet shop. So that's where a lot of our customer base is and so forth. And where we were with our previous Pinot products, again, we had 3 of them, all 3 from the Sonoma Coast, is I have a particular joy of showing Cabernet drinkers really good Pinot.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, there's a wake up here. And, qualitatively, it is, an expression of fruit that's very similar, except it's got a different flavor profile. And to get people to understand that and to be educated by tasting something like this, I think opens up a great horizon of a lot of our just basic cab drinkers. But yes, I'm speaking to you, all you in Texas. We're all our cab guys and gals.
Sure.
I really enjoy that. But, Mayfie, and as we're going to talk about Radian, they've got pretty big audiences on their own out of that. And that was part of our strategy, is to get a hold of the vineyards that already have some name recognition and some notoriety out there. And that association for what we can do is good. Now, I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but we make wine for quite a few other wineries at my winery here in what we call custom crush environment. And a third of them are Pinot products.
Really?
So we've gotten really good at making Pinot, just because all the way from, and I'll blurt out one of the biggest names, is Thomas Brown's project called Rivers Marie. Now, he has his own winery now in Calistoga, but for 8 years, he made all his wine here at Tamber Bay. And more than half of the bottles he produced were Pinot Noir. We got a lot of good history and, critical knowledge about how to make Pinot. And so you're going to kind of see that in these bottles as they go forward.
Kind of the underground submarine, just kind of rising up, and the secret Pinot house is.
Was there anything that drove you to really wanting to start making Pinot?
Truth be told, with Thomas Brown in the house, and, even though he has gotten most of his notoriety because of Cabernet, he's a Berg hound. He probably collects personally more red Burgundies than he does Cabernets. And he's become now well known for what he's doing in the Pinot world. But look, at 7, 8, 9 years ago, that necessarily wasn't the case. So look, we had the talent base. If we really got into discussion about, how do you make really good wine? Well, you need 2 things. And you need great terroir, you need soil and wind and all this kind of stuff. And then you need really good people at the end of the day. You need talent. And we had talent. And so at the very beginning, we watched Thomas make Pinot for himself. And he also had a couple other of his clients make wine here that were Pinot. And so with that talent base here, let's go. How can I not participate? And I do very much enjoy Pinot Noirs. So to have that ability to do so is why we got into it, quite frankly.
In contrast, we're going to go down south to Santa Rita Hills. Sonoma.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Talk to us about Radian. And I mean, I can tell you right now, the nose is a little spicier, has a little less of that bouquet that you get from the Sonoma fruit, a little more, I use the wrong word, the grittiness that you get from down south, Southern Pinot. It's a little warmer area.
Yes. Yeah. So it is warmer, definitely. So we're going to have a little bit bigger fruit and so forth. Radian is owned within the Hilt Winery, Hilt. And the Hilt is one of 3 wineries owned by a gentleman that we kind of know, depending on the circles that you hang with. And I say no, not personally, but the Hilt is owned by the owner. Also owns two other wineries. One is called Hunada, which is a campaign that's down again in the Central Coast area, but also a little vineyard here in Napa Valley called Screaming Eagle.
Oh, really?
It's the same owner, and that owner is Stan Conkey. And Stan is the owner of the LA Rams. He owns a couple other sports teams. He has been in Napa Valley for years and is the, let's just call him the silent and money partner of Bill Harlan. And not that I don't think he owns anything in the Harlan wine world directly, but he is very much involved with Meadowood. And I believe also the Napa Valley Reserve. And again, these are projects of Bill and so forth. And so, Bill came from the real estate development side, and this is where Stan has done a lot of his work over time and success and so forth. But so we're getting, we're getting fruit from the Hilt project. And how we found this is virtue of Derek Flegel, our head winemaker. He befriended the winemaker there at the Hilt and basically said, at some point when it's available, we'd love to come in. And sure enough, same year for Mayfie is we were able to get into to Radian. Radian is a warmer climate. Again, just a kind of a lower hilly way that, catches some good drift off the coast, but then, holds that heat inside a little bit. So therefore we get a little bit more bigger fruit in there, and you're sensing spices and some other things.
Definitely darker fruit. And it has that area specific aroma that I definitely get from that Central Coast area with the brambly is the wrong word, but it's got a woody nose to it. That's not so much.
Okay. Yeah. Very much. Very much. I'll be honest with you. I had 2019 Radian from the Hilt itself. My wife went down with one of our other interests, and that is playing polo. And she went down to get some lessons in the Santa Barbara area. And she made a stop into the Hilt. And so she brought home some goodies, which it's well appreciated.
Where is the Hilt located in there?
Well, that's a good question. I have yet to be there. So Derek did all the road work to go down and do that. Now my wife has had the opportunity to go there. I understand the winery is absolutely gorgeous. It was architected by Howard Backen, who's the architect of the stars here in Napa Valley, and actually who is our architect, for here at Tamber Bay. But he's also architect of Bill Harlan and, Ovid and all kinds of places. So she says it's this spectacular, small facility, but still just impeccably done. So it's a good place to go hang out. And you can get some good wines.
For sure. Now, does this have the same wood treatment as Sonoma?
Yeah. So same wood, all French oak. And I believe that they are actually the same purveyors of those. And I don't have the names in front of me at the moment. I think Bel Air is certainly one of them. Darnajou is probably in the mix. But Derek really likes to divide up a vineyard like this, or any of our wines, into anywhere from 3 to 5 different barrels. At the end of the day, after however the gestation time is in a barrel, even though you put the same fruit into the barrel at the end of 11 months, in this case, you have a little bit of variations in those wines, and then you blend them back. And that variation just brings all kinds of great complexity into a wine. And so we have the luxury of doing that.
What's the case production on this one?
We're headed south. Yeah, 240. We have asked for a little bit more fruit, but down there they were absolutely a victim of a smaller yield than we thought.
Do you think it'll increase or?
Well, we're certainly hoping. And, I just read an interesting report as we talk about drought conditions in California is the Central Coast, from Monterey down to Santa Barbara, has officially come out of drought. Officially. So all this rain that we're having, Napa and north of San Jose is at a stage just before that. It got a lot better, no doubt. But the declaration is there's a couple counties up on the Oregon border and the Central Coast are now technically designated out of drought. So good for them. And
I believe it. They got 8 inches of rain that one day. My friend lives right next to the polo fields in Carpinteria, where your wife was.
Yes.
A little culvert that runs right between the polo fields and that housing development is where he lives. And it was a full river. that day.
I remember reading that Montesino, of course, this is where, Oprah Winfrey and Harry and Meghan, they had to evacuate the entire city, town. It's not a city because it's kind of on the side of the hill. And maybe they're.
Well, I also just wondered, are they evacuating them just because they're Oprah Winfrey and they're.
No, because
I'm
6 years to that day.
Kidding.
It was weird. The rainstorm 6 years to that day hit that exact same day when they had all those landslides.
Yeah, I was being sarcastic.
Seriously? Wow. Okay.
It was weird timing. It was to the day.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's been great. Honestly, it's spread out of California. Snowpack has been great. I mean, it's been really great weather-wise, getting the weather that we need. Rain, snow.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And we're hearing, every Shasta, Trinity, and Oroville, the big reservoirs have really risen. So it's going to create a lot of calmness, I hope, in our weather flow of water right now. I got introduced to the Santa Rita Hills area when my bank, of all people, introduced me to the general manager of Sea Smoke.
Oh,
and the reason why we got introduced is because he's also an equestrian. So it really had nothing to do with wine, except that's how we had a banking relationship with Silicon Valley Bank. Is our wine. Had a little plug there. But we got together, and his name is Victor Gallegos. He's still there, still the GM. And so I, obviously got a tour of their place and how they're growing and the history of why they picked that particular area. And of course, the success of Sea Smoke is now legendary. And so I've been really enjoying Santa Rita Hill style wines. And then of course it has just exploded down there. So that's the reason why the hill, that's, let's put it this way. Stan doesn't do anything that isn't first class. He wants the best of the best. And, for whatever he can afford it. So he chose to do it there in Santa Rita Hills. So, and now we're beneficiaries of that. That's pretty cool. So, and so both these vineyards that you're saying, we're now in discussions of a long-term contract, so we can stay with them for as long as we possibly can. That first year, Joe, as I was talking about is, we kind of test that relationship. Are we able to, make recommendations in farming? And they're looking at us too. Like, are you going to make a good wine? I think we've proven each other out. So now we'd like to get into a longer term agreement and make this, part of our permanent program.
That's exciting. They both have, and I want to tell anybody that's listening right now, if you're looking to introduce yourself to a Pinot Noir, these two have such a dramatic sense of place. Like if you want to understand Sonoma Coast Pinot versus Santa Rita Hills Pinot, these are two great bottles to prove that tasting. If you're going for a Somm or a W set, these are great examples of each place.
Thank you for that. I'll take that as a compliment. It's so true to do that. Let me just give a small plug to our third Pinot, which we have released. There is a reason because we're holding it back. But this one talk about some namesake. So it is the UV Vineyard, the initials UV. And stands for Ulysses Valdez. Ulysses Valdez, in some people's minds, is the Beckstoffer of Sonoma. Now, he doesn't own a lot of land like Andy does, but and Ulysses Valdez has since passed recently. So his family still takes over, but he's considered, one of the great farmers and vineyard managers of Sonoma. But this is by the namesake of his vineyard, right? The UV Vineyard. And so I have a fun story with this. Now, I've been following the UV for a while. And so again, just serendipitously, all three of these came available at the same time, so we can get fruit off it in 21. And we had just signed a 1 year with an evergreen contract. Okay, so we're going to get wine in 21. Signed it. It may have been about this time of year, and it had to have been. Well, anyway, you'll get the notion of this. So then, Wine Spectator comes out with their top 100 wines of the world. Number 2 was UV Pinot Noir, made by my buddy down the street, Aubert. Now, Aubert is mostly a Chardonnay shop, and it's here in Calistoga, but they got the number 2 wine in the world by Wine Spectator. It's right. And we had just signed a contract, and I'll tell you, his blocks, Aubert's, are right next to ours. Or I should say, we were successful in getting the ones right next to his. Talk about association. It's great.
Talk about timing. Here, 6 weeks later.
Right. Here's the bad news. The bad news is the fruit was so thin, we only made 140 cases. it's minor compared. Now we kind of asked for the same amount. We want to get to and for your audience's purposes, we wanted to get to 6 tons of fruit, and a ton will equate to about 60 cases, but we got half that, if not a little bit less. So it's minimal. And why we are holding it is maybe a way I'm going to phrase this in my naive way. The UV is a Cabernet lover's Pinot. It is so big and so voluptuous of this dark red Bing cherry, but then just encompassed all the way with plum notions to it, that it just needs a little bit more time in a bottle before we're going to let it sneak out the door. So our strategy is to have Mayfi out and Radiant out and, kind of accommodate our customers and develop our Pinot program with that. And then I think by early to midsummer, UV will make its appearance. And then we'll have our three lineups going, and we can't wait to keep picking, keep making it.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Anyway, that's my plug. That's my plug for it.
The best way to get the UV is really join the club.
It's to join the club. It's to start. It's like anything else. You just got to get in the program. Suggest to a lot of kids who are trying to get into homes. I said, man, I know it sounds expensive and so forth, but you just got to get in the game. Because once you're in, then you can afford to kind of move up and around. I think the same thing with these kind of programs. And I'm hoping we get more fruit to play with, so we don't have to be so kind of restrictive and secret, so to speak. But this first year was a challenge to get as much fruit as we did. So, but we're happy we're here. We're out the gate. We're doing it.
Well, the proof's definitely in the bottle. For sure. Proof's in the bottle.
Good.
As we're wrapping down, I want to catch up on one other thing. You were talking about your wife and endurance horseback riding. Any notable wins the last year or notable events?
It's again, so back to your audience, and my wife and I both, did this sport called endurance horse racing, which is 50 to 100 mile single day races on one horse, and otherwise known as a long day. Right. So a 50-mile race, if we're actually racing, depending on terrain, we can do it in 5 to 7 hours. And then you just have to 2x it at least for a 100-mile race. And many 100-mile races, you start in the dark and you end in the dark just because it takes all day to get there. It's an extreme sport. And so I officially retired 2 years ago. COVID kind of took the wind out of my sail. And it is an extreme sport physically. It's a lot of work. So I did my year. I did it for about 22, 23 years. Jennifer refused to acknowledge her retirement. But last year we got into this new sport, and it's called polo. And it's the complete opposite of what endurance is. Polo is, in my definition, it's hockey on a horse.
Yeah.
Right? It's a ball sport, whereas endurance isn't. You got to put it so-called in the net, so to speak. And by the way, polo is full contact. Man, it is. There are rules that allow you to just go right on into another horse and
get in there and get out. Yeah.
Get it right and do that. And so we started to do it a little over a year ago and just fell in love with it. And so much so my wife abandoned me for a week and went down to Santa Barbara to kind of do some stuff I couldn't go.
What a fun transition. I would love to do polo.
Yeah, polo is neat. And there's a couple variations. There's the big field polo. There's a thing called arena polo, which is a little bit more contained because it's in just a small arena. But here's what I really like about polo that's different from endurance. Because, at the end of a 50-mile, 75, 100-mile ride, man, I just want to go to bed. I'm tired. Polo is not like that. Polo is all about the party.
Yeah.
you play your match. And, it's a reason why Ralph Lauren really enjoys that name. Polo has quite a cachet to it. And so you can't wait to just get to the finish of the game because it's time to clink up your rosé or whatever you're doing and enjoy. So
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a perfect match to a winery. And we had a winery on, was it James King?
They have a whole entire polo grounds, and on the weekends, I mean, it's free for anybody there to come out and watch polo, but they also have a winery.
I need to know. Where is it?
It's in Virginia.
Okay.
It's in Virginia. So it's free to go and watch polo, but they also have a winery. So you could be out there purchasing their wine. You can picnic in the.
That's just it. Yeah. You just back up your car, your SUV or something. And
it's basically a whole family day.
Yep. Now, we belong to a club right now because you have to kind of do it that way here in California, and it's in Petaluma. And so as we started getting better and started playing what we call club chuckers, their period. This is why it's such a bizarre sport. Their periods are called chuckers. How can you not like a sport that's called chucker?
How many chuckers in a match?
Well, at the league we were playing in, 4, but if you get to the big leagues, it's 7. And here's a chucker is 7.5 minutes. That's it. But you're going fast, man. You are exhausted in that 7.5 minutes. In many cases, you get a new horse because you've kind of worn your horse out onto that. But you're absolutely right. You just kind of back right up to the whole event and you kind of watch it going on. And sometimes between chuckers, they'll allow the folks to go out and help repair the divots that the horses have made. Mm-hmm. Of course, you do that with a glass of champagne in your hand. You can't do it otherwise. So it's a great sport. And for us, Drew, my wife and I have been into horses, she longer than me, and I'm 24, 25 years into it. It's just an extension of something that we absolutely adore. We're very passionate about the horses that we have and just horse riding and so forth. And, I won't show you, but, I've got my horse riding gear on. It's later this afternoon. I'm going to go out and jump on some ponies and start getting them exercise because they haven't had much in the last couple of months because of the rain.
My daughter would be extremely envious. She's really wants to go horseback riding all the time.
All I'm going to say is I'm sorry for that because as soon as the kids get into it, man, mom and dad are shelling out the butt.
I know. I had a horse growing up, so.
Yep. But to come full circle, the name Tamber Bey is the name of my first 2 Arabian horses. Mm-hmm. And the logo on there that's on the bottles and everywhere else.
That's for everyone to see here. We got the.
Yeah, that's Bayamo. That's my first horse. He's still alive. He's 26 years old. He's very retired. He's earned it. He's earned just hanging out and being taken care of. So horses are in our blood as well as wine.
That is awesome, Barry. It's been so good catching up with you. Before we leave, is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience?
Wow. Well, a little bit, just that, we're here for you up here and we're out of Calistoga. Outside of having great wines, when you come to Tamber Bey, it's serendipitous to our conversation. It's a really wonderful experience and very unique. And so I would love to have people up here to kind of do it. And when you do, just ask for me if I'm here. I'd love to come see you. Let's drink some Pinot together and Cabernet and just have a fantastic time. But other than that, I just wish everybody a great year. Let's make 2023 fantastic.
Let's do it. Here's to that.
Here's to that. Cheers, Barry.
I'll be with you a little bit later after I get off my horse this afternoon. I'll join you. Thank you, both of you, for the opportunity to talk to your audience. And good to see you both.
Great.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Have a great ride. Have a great ride, Barry.
Thank you. All right. Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.